Hello and welcome to not VoxPopcast, but I'm still Mav. Oh, this is weird because I'm usually when I'm in this room and I'm recording a podcast, I'm usually saying hello and welcome back to VoxPopcast, and I say it's a weekly pseudo-academic roundtable pop culture analysis with drinking and swearing. And that's not what this is. I'm going to drink, but I'm going to be safe. I'm going to drink an iced tea rather than like the beer that I normally drink during the show because we'll see why in a second. And oh, maybe I don't know. We'll try not to swear too much because there's children around. I had a weird idea a few weeks ago, and I posted about it on Facebook and on Blue Sky to see if people were interested. And I thought, would it be cool? Like, I've always wanted to do a movie review show. I was a big fan of Siskel and Ebert when I was a kid because I was a weird kid who watched Siskel and Ebert, even though I was a 10-year-old at the time. But I thought, would it be cool to do my own Siskel and Ebert? But I didn't want to do it with another old person. I thought it would be cool to do a version of a movie review show where, since I'm an old person, I'm a very young Gen Xer, though. I'm basically a teenager, but I thought it would be cool to do one with a real teenager. And so, like, I called one of my favorite people in the whole world who's been on my regular podcast before, but she was much littler then. So this is my niece, Marie. Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing good.
So you are a young person, is that correct?
That is correct.
How old are you?
I'm 14 now.
Okay. Would you call yourself a Gen Z person?
Yes. Some people might
Okay.
disagree, but yes.
Oh, so what do some people think? They think you're a
Gen
boomer?
Alpha.
Oh, yeah, I guess it depends, but you're really your sister, I'm guessing, is one of the people who would argue that you're not.
Yeah.
Your older sister sometimes likes to, who's also my niece, obviously. Your older sister often likes to point out that she's much more older and much more mature than you are.
Because
Is that
nobody
correct?
else can tell. Yes.
That was mean. It was funny, but it was mean. Um, so you are the Gen Z person, or we could pretend you're a baby boomer, whichever you like. But
I don't know.
I don't think you're quite that.
Okay.
You're not quite that old. But I thought a cool way of doing a movie review show would be if every week we both watched the same movie and we could take turns alternating back and forth as to what the movie is that we'd watch, and then we'd review it. And then we would give like a thumbs up, thumbs down score at the end. We talk about what we liked and what we didn't like. And then hopefully that would mean that young people like me and even younger people like you would learn a bunch of cool new movies that weren't necessarily targeted at their generation, but that would be worth watching or worth avoiding if it turns out that we hate the movies. Sound like a good plan?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay, so what made you decide that you wanted to do this? Because like you were on my other show, but you were, I think, 9 at the time. You just recorded a bit for it, and then I don't know. You may have been a little older, but it's been years since you were on the other show.
Yeah, I don't remember. That's I like movies, and this is just really an excuse to watch a lot more movies that I've never seen before.
Okay. Okay. Well, so the first movie we picked was a movie that I'd never seen before, and it is called The Book of Life. So
Yeah.
that's going to be our intro episode today. Is we're going to talk about the movie The Book of Life from 2014. It was directed by George R. Gutierrez, and he wrote it along with a guy named Doug Langdell. And a brief synopsis is: once upon a time, there were 3 children living in the town of
San
San
Angel.
Angel. How's it pronounced?
San Angel.
San Angel. Oh, wow, look at you with the very official Hispanic
Yeah, you
Mexican
need to make a
pronunciation.
weird H-like sound in Spanish.
Mhm. And the 3 children are Manolo, Joaquin, and Maria. And both boys are in love with Maria. And then on the Day of the Dead, 2 demon gods, La Muerta and her husband Zibala,
La Muerte and Zibalba.
Zibalba. Okay, so you take Spanish. Clearly, you take Spanish classes,
Yeah.
and we'll talk about that in a minute. But they make a wager for control of the underworld and they basically wager on which of the 2 boys Maria will marry one day. However, soon after they make the bet, Maria is sent away to study abroad in Spain, and both boys vow that they're going to wait for her. So then she returns like years later, and Joaquin has grown up to become a military hero, and Manolo is he's an aspiring musician, but his father is forcing him into the family business of bullfighting, which he's not terribly good at. The town is also being menaced by a cadre of bandits, and then a bunch of plot happens, and Manolo is sent on a trip through the underworld where he has to gather together his ancestors to help him, Maria, Joaquin, and all the townspeople defend their village. And then also, I guess at some point, Maria has to decide who she's going to marry for some reason that's not very clear as to why she has to decide that. The movie is a runtime of 95 minutes. It has an 83% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 67% on Metacritic currently. Why'd you pick this movie?
I watched it in Spanish class first. I really like Day of the Dead movies. And this one seemed really interesting because I like the animation style of it, but I also really like
Mm-hmm.
the story of it. With the
Mm-hmm.
idea of one of the characters, Manolo in this case, going between the world of the living and the world of the dead. It's also just it's really fun. I like the animation style. Very colorful.
Mm-hmm. It is very colorful. And it's rated PG, but it's appropriate for families. I mean,
Yeah,
I was trying to think, why would it be rated PG and not G? But there's a little bit of murder in it. there, there's a
it's
few murders in it.
flash imagery and slightly violent scenes because there's like fight scenes in it.
There are a couple people who just straight up get killed. There-
Yeah, true. I mean,
and not necessarily in pleasant ways, but it's not terribly bloody, and it is CG animation. It was nominated for a Golden Globe in 2014 for Best Animated Feature. It didn't win. Um,
no clue what a
I'd never
Golden Globe
watched this
is. I
before.
probably should know that.
What?
I have no clue what a Golden Globe is.
Oh, that's okay. On my other show, we've talked about my feelings on the Golden Globes quite a bit. It's an award. It's not the Oscars. It's the award that is sort of an earlier ceremony that comes before the Oscars. But it was nominated for Best Animated Feature. It only grossed $100 million on a $50 million budget, so it was not terribly successful. But you said you watched it in Spanish class, so I guess it's got some appeal. My big thing was I watched it and I was immediately reminded of Coco,
I think a lot of
which
people are.
yeah, which came out in 2017, so it's like 3 years later. And I like Coco a lot. And I probably like Coco better, but I also think it's sort of unfair to compare them because they're two entirely the plot's not even remotely similar. They're two entirely different movies.
You
At least
argue because they both
uh,
have a character who goes to the land of the dead who is a guitarist, but
yeah, I mean, I guess the thing that is similar is both movies take place on the Day of the Dead, on Dia de los
Mhm.
Muertos. And that's about it. They're both animated and they take place on the Day of the Dead. And I think that that's
I
why
could
people
draw more
compare them.
parallels, but they're
Yeah,
not.
but I also think it's unfair because, like, I can think of a million movies that happen on Christmas. I can think of a million movies that happen on Halloween or on Thanksgiving. I can think of 2 that happen on Day of the Dead. This one and the other one. And so, like, I think maybe people compare them just because it's, like, the other movie and they're both cartoons. But, like, maybe that just means we need more Day of the Dead movies. Well, you said you like Day of the Dead movies, so can you think of other ones?
I actually cannot. There are not a lot of movies about Dia de los Muertos.
So so why did you wanna do this one?
Um, besides, I like Day of the Dead movies. So
Both of them.
I've said this like twice now. I really like the animation style, but
Okay.
like they're almost like puppets, like marionettes,
Mhm,
but not quite. Um, but then depending on the character, they have different like styles. Like there's some characters that literally like come apart, like their limbs are being held together, almost like the children's toys where you can like take apart the limbs and put them back together. They're
mhm,
like designed to look that way, and they come apart. There are other characters that are puppets. There's characters that are specifically called out for being made of certain materials, and you can tell in the animation
mhm.
style. That's one thing I really liked about it.
Yeah, that was weird because it's not talked about, but, like, I noticed immediately that the main characters, Manolo, Maria, and Joaquin, they're CGI, but,
Mhm.
like, they are wooden marionettes. They've got wood grain skin, which is weird. There's no reason to do it. That's
Um,
not part of the story. They never actually
kind of.
say, "Hey, we are puppets," do they?
The beginning of the movie, before you even get into like the actual story they're telling,
Mhm.
when the red-haired woman, her name is Beth, if you watch the Spanish version of the
Mhm.
subtitles, when she opens the chest, they're all these little figurines.
Mhm.
So when they're
Yeah,
they're
there's
like wooden figurines that she's telling a story with.
right, there's a framing story where, the entire story is
Being told to
happening
children.
as a woman at a museum is explaining the story to 5 kids who are just kind of at the museum
Mhm.
on a
They're referred to
I
as
didn't
like
have
the
much.
detention kids is one of the first things they say in the movie.
Yeah, they didn't I didn't that I thought that was weird. It didn't have that much to do with the movie other than the fact that they just kind of wanted the framing device. So I left it out when I gave the description, but I
Mhm.
guess that explains why they look like puppets, but that doesn't really have anything to do with the main body of the movie, I don't think.
No, not really. It just kind of appears again every once in a while. You'll cut back to the
Mhm.
children and you'll be like, "Oh yeah, forgot about them."
What were your other thoughts? What did you think about it?
I there was one thing that really struck me as odd was the fact that they call out Day of the Dead as specifically being on November 2nd instead of 2 days, which I think
Mhm.
is just kind of a thing people do. But I was like, wait, what? In the beginning,
So, what do you mean?
Day of the Dead is a 2 day holiday, and they specifically call out November 2nd as being the Day of the Dead and it being one night. Multiple times.
Mhm.
They call it out at the end of the movie too, because they're like on this one night. But it's 2 days. People forget it.
How do you know so much about this holiday?
It's my birthday.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is your birthday, so that's the only reason you like Day of the Dead? It's
It's
not
cool
just your
culture
birthday, it's
too.
another holiday too. It's
But
another
originally, yes, because it's my birthday, but it's got cool culture to it too.
What's the other cool thing that happened that day?
Oh, your anniversary. It took me a second there.
It's literally a thing you've known your entire life. So, I guess the question is, do we recommend this movie?
I know I do.
So you're a thumbs up? I am also a thumbs up, so I guess that's 2 thumbs up for the movie. You can stream it currently on Disney Plus. That is where it's available. Do you think it is an anytime movie, or is it very particular?
It's really you can watch it anytime. It is
Mhm.
curated to the holiday, but that's like saying you can only watch Christmas movies in December, and people watch them in the middle of summer. So
Okay. Alright. Well, thank you for discussing this movie with me. Um, thank you for suggesting it to me too, because I don't know that I ever would have watched this without you, which I think is sort of the point of the show. So, if you enjoyed that, please subscribe to us on iTunes or Pandora or Spotify. I don't know. I'm not even sure if we're on all those sites yet. I'm working on it. But wherever you can get podcasts from, you can subscribe to on the Vox Popcast YouTube channel. You can watch us there, like and subscribe, do the things the kids do, and write us comments. So next week, I guess maybe we'll try a movie that you haven't seen before. How's that sound?
that sounds good.
All right. Thank you for listening or watching. Bye.
Bye.